Hi, I'm Rob Kepner, and I'm here with Cory Glazier, talking about a few questions we have for panel session at our ESW National Conference held at UCSD. Um, so, Cory, first I want to ask you, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I'm happy to be talking with you today. My name is Cory Glazier, and I'm starting an online education company called University Without Borders. And I'm really passionate about looking for ways that we can help to make sure that when we're engaged in some type of international service, that we're doing it the best we possibly can. We've got, as Western countries, Western Europe and America, we send volunteers all over the world to work with communities in West Africa, East Africa, Central America, South America, Southeast Asia, you name it. And there's people that live in extreme poverty in these areas. And the problem is that not all of our volunteer efforts do as good of a job at helping people to sustainably improve the quality of their life as we hope that they will. And so I spent several years in Kenya and other areas of Africa doing community development projects, training volunteers, and really learning what types of community development efforts really add value to communities and which ones just barely scratch the surface. And so with University Without Borders, our objective is to support organizations like you guys to the degree that you're doing international service programs, organizations like Engineers Without Borders, Global Brigades, Alternative Breaks, college groups that are sending volunteers overseas, and we want to make sure that volunteers are trained, they have the right perspective and paradigm when they step into international service, and that we can really help to convert the passion that they have towards helping to end extreme poverty into something that's real valuable impact, as opposed to something that might be just kind of a nice little short-term thing to do that kind of feels good, or that takes a nice picture but may or may not really support the communities in the ways that they need the most.
Mhm. Okay, another question. So when you deal with foreign countries, I mean, obviously there's going to be some, communication barriers because you don't speak all languages of the world. So kind of how do you deal with that, and so you can communicate with the natives to try to explain to them what you're doing and how you're helping them?
Absolutely, that's a great question. It, you're spot on. When you go to work with people in developing countries, English is most likely not going to be their primary language. And it's interesting, even in countries like Kenya or Uganda, where English is actually their national language, a large majority of people still don't actually speak English when you get into the rural areas, which is typically where I work and where your programs might be. Um, and so for one, we're fortunate that we have English because it's a totally universal language. It's more common, ubiquitous, worldwide than anything else. And so oftentimes it's pretty reasonable to find some type of interpreter. And so a large majority of the work that I've done has been through having an interpreter. And you can do it in a, if you're working with a community, you can just kind of make friends with someone and say, hey man, will you help to translate for me? Assuming you find someone that speaks good English, and you'll find people all over that speak decent English that can serve as interpreters. Or if you're going to be in a community for the long term, then I might hire somebody to work with me full time as an interpreter, and then carry out the development work that I do through them. I believe that most of the development work that we should be doing doesn't necessarily revolve around giving things away or building stuff for people. It involves with interacting with people. And in order to do that, communication is obviously very, very important. And so we need to make sure that we're enhancing our ability to communicate effectively, and using an interpreter and working with that interpreter, I think is a really, really important piece. We can't just assume, oh, they don't speak the language so we can't communicate. No, people all over the world just do that through an interpreter, and so a community development worker, a volunteer should do just the same. And then also one thing to go along with that is, in order to speak effectively through an interpreter, you massively slow down your language. you simplify your message, and you hold yourself responsible for communicating effectively. One of the greatest mistakes that someone can make is say, oh, they didn't understand what I'm saying, they must be stupid or slow or whatever. But in all reality, you used a whole bunch of words that didn't mean anything to them. You used jargon, American jargon, that isn't actually something that they might learn when they're learning English as a second language. You might slur your words or do a whole bunch of things that work fine in America, but you're actually making it very, very difficult for a person to understand you. So just taking full responsibility for the communication, that you're doing everything in your power to communicate effectively and clearly to the people that you're interacting with.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's really good. All right. One more question here. So right now, I'm currently the director of a project that ESW is doing in Thailand. I think I mentioned this before when we first met. What we're trying to do is implement a clean water system and sustainable energy using hydroelectric power and also irrigation through crops. So basically the question is, you're the engineering side of it, obviously we're building systems put there, but there's much more to it than that. So I guess what I'm asking you is, how can we develop a good relationship with the natives while still implementing our systems there?
Got it. So go ahead and describe to me the type of irrigation system that you're wanting to implement.
Okay, sure. So basically right now they get one crop a year when they grow their coffee beans.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do is multiply that for 2 or 3 crops a year so they can increase their profit and actually make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them don't make any money.
Right.
So we're using sort of a drip line system that will reuse water in a way to increase that.
And where's the water coming from, do you know?
It's coming from a source, a waterfall, a pond, like, and we're going to pipe to feed the water and store it in tanks and then use it when you need it for the irrigation system.
Okay. Well, your program and the work that you're doing may or may not love or appreciate my suggestions, but I'll tell you exactly what I think is best. Part of the methodology of community development work that I advocate and teach is called human-centered development. And that means that we don't focus on building things or giving stuff away. We focus on developing people's capacities. And in any part of the world we go to, people have found solutions to their problems, right? How to irrigate their farms, for example, from local water sources. And so in order to develop a strong relationship with, and let's call them community members, in order to develop a strong relationship with those community members, it would have to start with really coming in and letting them know that you're there and available to support them in helping to solve some of their irrigation challenges, but not to solve their irrigation challenges for them, to do anything for them, to give them anything, or to provide them any money. Because that undermines effective and legitimate societal development. And when I say societal development, what I'm saying is all societies evolve on their own, and they evolve by figuring out how to solve their own problems with their own available resources. That's how us as Homo sapiens have been solving our problems for the last million years. And so as a community development worker, we can come in as a catalyst and to support them in identifying their own problems and discovering their own solutions, and then implementing those solutions with their own available resources. Now, the problem is this type of work, it takes longer, it takes better communication skills, it takes better planning, and it requires the supporting organization to completely have hands off and no control. And that's very difficult for organizations, because oftentimes what happens is an organization raises money telling donors they're going to do a certain thing with that money. and then they feel a high pressure to do exactly that thing so they can take a picture of that thing so they can show their donors what they did. Well, we need to kind of see if we can reorient the conversation a little bit, so it's more of a support role to the community. So if I were implementing this program or helping to kind of plan the program, then what I would suggest is let's go there and let's find out what solutions the local people have to solving their own irrigation problem. Okay, allow them to brainstorm, have a town meeting, have a couple meetings around this conversation where they're saying, okay, we have a water source here, we have farms there. What are all the possible ways that we can help to get the water from here onto the farms there? So now their minds, their hearts, their interests are all involved in this conversation. As engineers, you can then come in as professionals and say, great, let us give you some best practices around this technique. Let us help with some of the engineering components and some of the plans and blueprints if you want to do that technique. How can we help you based upon these various different solutions that you come up with to be able to help to implement this project? And then you're supporting a community to solve their own problems, as opposed to coming in and solving that problem for them. And that's right. A really more mature perspective of community development work. Most organizations don't do that. Most organizations, they just go in and they do the project because they want to, and they want to take pictures of their white American volunteers with their matching t-shirts all doing the thing because it feels good. But what message does that send to a community? That puts a community in a position to think to themselves, we don't have the ability to solve our own problems. Mm-hmm. And so you're reinforcing some negative paradigms by carrying out development work from that type of, in that type of way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I wish we could have talked to you sooner in this project. That'd be great. You have a lot of good things to say. It'd be great if you were like an advisor or something. But that's the end of my questions for you. Do you have any final thoughts or anything like that?
No. Do you have any follow-up questions or anything? Did that make sense as far as how to be able to best engage with the community members is really to put them in charge? And let me rephrase that, because you're not actually putting anyone in charge, because we don't have any authority to put anyone in charge or not. They're already in charge. So right, exactly. to step in and to allow their natural leadership to play out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess I got into this project a while ago, but before me, ESW had started it itself, and I just think with international projects, you're right, it takes a lot of time, and honestly, I don't think we would have enough time to fully complete this project the way it should be done. So I guess we're just kind of in a situation where we're just doing the best we can, but I would love to take all of your advice and somehow implement that. We just need people who are willing and motivated to do that, and all the time.
Well, I've got an education program that's going to be released in a couple weeks. It's called Human Centered Development 101. It's a 10-hour video training that I would suggest you go through. I would suggest anyone else that's in your in your program planning to go through. And if you know of other chapters or other school clubs that are kind of going through similar issues, I'd recommend that you forward it along to them too, because it's an investment of time and resources that you go through that adds value to you, so that you have more information, more skills, more background, so that you can add value as you plan and implement these types of projects.
Right.
What I will say, and nobody likes it when I say this, but I'll say it anyways. I think that when we are carrying out some type of development project, we will have an impact. It will either be positive or negative. And sometimes if we're not super well planned, if we don't understand best practices of community development work, if we don't have the time to do things right, then it might be more effective to not do anything at all than to do something ineffectively or in a way that could actually cause negative ramifications. And
Right.
there are thousands of organizations that cause all kinds of problems. I personally have seen countless half-finished projects that added no value to a community, and ultimately I mean, think about what it feels like for someone to come in and make you a promise, and then for you to get your hopes up and get excited about development and progress and improving quality of life and a solution, and then that organization doesn't have the time to do it right and it breaks, or they don't have all the money to finish the job, or they run out of time so they just abort and get on their plane because they don't want to miss their flight, or whatever the situation is. If we don't have time to see something all the way through, then we shouldn't start it. And we, as engineers, I'm not an engineer, but as an engineer, it's critical to look at an international development project the same exact way that you look at any project in America. If you were going to do a project, you wouldn't do something halfway. You wouldn't do it if you didn't have all the time, all the information, everything taken into consideration. You just wouldn't do it because you'd look like a fool, because that thing would be sitting at you, looking at you for the rest of your life saying, why did you leave this project unfinished or not done correctly? But when we go to a developing country, then we have this unfortunate luxury of being able to build something, create something, and take a picture of the process of it so that our donors feel like we did something valuable. And whether or not that serves any short-term or long-term value, nobody really knows. And so we can just leave it behind and not really have to worry too much about it. So then we give ourselves permission to not be as professional with the work that we do overseas as we would with something that you would do here in America that has certain regulations, certain best practices, certain oversight, those types of things.
Okay, well, that's good stuff, Cory. Thanks for your time, and I'm definitely going to show this to everyone at the panel session so we can all hear what you have to say. It's really good stuff. So thanks again.
All right, buddy. It was great to be with you, and just hit me up or let me know if I can serve you guys in any other way. Cheers.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Right. Bye.